Thank you, Madam Speaker. Sidusmasi. I'd like to move that Bill number 81-32 COR, as substituted by the Committee on General Governmental Operations and Cultural Affairs, be placed in the third reading file, and I'd like to speak on the matter, Madam Speaker.
Yes, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Bill 81 is an act to provide health insurance to GovGuam employees and retirees for fiscal year 2014. And the subject matter of the bill sets up a new method of acquiring health insurance for GovGuam employees. Before we begin, Madam Speaker, I'd like to make a couple of disclosures. Number one, of course, is that I am a member of Select Care, which is the current carrier for the GovGuam health insurance program. Number two is that it's no secret that over the last couple of years I've faced some major health issues that's required me to deal extensively with Select Care, both on its administrative as well as its management staff. And in dealing with them, I've had to request and received accommodations for me to continue to access health care. It's also no secret that Bill 81-32 has been opposed by Select Care, or at least even for earlier reiterations of this bill have been opposed by healthcare. So we've been on Select Care. So we've been on two different sides. I do want to state this, Madam Speaker, for the record, that during all of the discussions on this bill, that the staff and management of Select Care have been nothing but professionals in how they've dealt with me, both as a senator and and most especially as a consumer of their program. I have never ever felt at all that because Select Care and I differ on this matter, and that I have been pushing for a different selection process that may open up the market and may break Select Care's exclusivity in the GovGuam health insurance market, that they have ever at all have that entered into any of the decisions they've made with regards to my ability to access the health care services that they provide under the GovGuam health insurance program. So I do want to say that for the record. I want to thank them, and I want to give them credit because they deserve that credit in how they had their staff work with consumers, and in this case myself, both as a policymaker and especially as a consumer of the service that they provide for the government of Guam. I have nothing but good things to say about how they've carried out their business and how they dealt with me from that perspective. So I do want to state that for the very record, because I think the people do know that it is not about me in terms of what I'm trying to do with Bill 81. It is not about Select Care. And I think that I hope that Select Care also feels that in how I have tried to carry out my duty as a policymaker in pushing this initiative and presenting it to the body for their consideration, that they feel the same way that I feel about how they've carried themselves out and how they treated me, and the professionalism of themselves as managers of the program, as well as the staff that they have. So I do want to state that for the record and thank them once again. Nonetheless, Madam Speaker, of course, as I said, this is not about me, or is it about Select Care. It is about the government of Guam, the people of Guam, the money that belongs to the government of Guam, and how best we can move forward in terms of providing an alternative methodology for procuring health care for the GovGuam employee and retiree and their families, and of course, how careful we have to be with government money, and how the program that currently exists in how we procure health insurance for the GovGuam has not resulted in the best deal for the GovGuam employee, and in this case then, of course, then their families and retirees, but then also for the people of Guam, that we can in fact provide a better system, a better process, a better product. We can provide lower cost and more choices to the GovGuam employee and retiree and their families under the GovGuam health insurance program by the process that being proposed in Bill 81-32. As you know, Madam Speaker, we've had public hearings on this. We had it last term. We've had it this term. And in all of those public hearings, Madam Speaker, we've had the current carrier, of course, which is SelectCare, oppose opening up the process to have choices made available to the GovGuam employee. They feel that the current process, which has allowed for and resulted in an exclusive contract to one single company for over $74 million of GovGuam and taxpayer dollars for the procurement of health insurance, should only go to one company instead of opening it up and providing the people, the employees of the government of Guam, the retirees of the government of Guam and their families, a choice so that we have competition within the market that allows people to have that freedom of choice. And in all of that, we've had one testimony come forward opposing it, and that has been the current carrier. We have had the multiple carriers who provide health insurance services and products for other members of our community come in and believe and support opening up the market. They feel that opening up the market, number one, will result in better product design, development, and choice for the GovGuam employee, retiree, and their families. That's what we all want. We want a better choice. We want choice, number one. We want better choices. And that the competition that will result or that will occur from having more choices within the GovGuam Health Insurance Program will result in better service and better product for the GovGuam employee and their families. So, Madam Speaker, we've always had Department of Administration come in and oppose the process. And of course, once again, true to form, they're here today. And of course, the reason for this are they outline in a report that or a testimony that they just received, and we'll go to that testimony point by point. But again, in all the testimony we've had the professionals from health insurance companies, both local and national, who provide health insurance services to the federal health insurance employees health insurance benefits program, which encompasses hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of federal employees and their families, testified that that process that they have participated in under the federal health insurance program, which provides better service and better choices to the employees, is a process that can work for the government of Guam that we have outlined in Bill 81 and they support. We had 3 carriers who do that, both locally based and both nationally based, who participate in that program saying, open it up, it's a better system, it's a better process. It gives us greater confidence in dealing with the government of Guam than the current process, which is subjective and biased and fraught with loopholes that have resulted in protests where we've had to have an automatic renewal of existing rates and benefits that have resulted in overpayments of millions of dollars to the health insurance companies that will have to be returned after 15 months or so. But it sits there in their bank account, these millions of dollars, rather than having them available to the employees of the government of Guam in reduced rates, so that it's kind of like filing your income tax. You know, do you file correctly and not have to pay, or do you have a refund that you have to wait for? Well, thankfully for refunds, we hope to see the end of having to wait for them for an inordinate amount of time. And under this process, this will also, once again, not require government of Guam and the employees to overpay and then wait for the rebate to be calculated. We believe that the design of the rate plan that you see in Bill 81 is such that it will result in immediate savings to the pocketbooks of the GovGuam employees and retirees, rather than having to overpay and wait for a refund. Madam Speaker, some of the comments recently was that we shouldn't do this. We shouldn't move forward with this because the Department of, and this is from the incumbent carrier's testimony that you have in you. By the way, Madam Speaker, our committee, the Office of Finance and Budget Committee and Appropriations, provided to members of this body responses and a cost impact analysis on Bill 81 that have been passed out that is available to each and every member of this body. And in trying to respond to some of the concerns raised by those opposing the bill, and in this case, of course, by the incumbent carrier Select Care, they're saying we shouldn't proceed because Health Insurance Negotiating Committee has redefined its rules and the regulations and are improving the manner and process. But the rules of procedure are not complete. And if somebody attended the public testimony on the rules and regulations, you'll see that in some of the testimony given both by myself, by the Vice Speaker, who have followed this matter very, very closely, by those that are going to be participating in the RFP process, you'll see a myriad and a laundry list of things that are deficient in the rules of procedure that still must be resolved before we can move forward with going through the RFP process. So that process is not ready, Madam Speaker, and there are deficiencies in the rules and regs, as pointed out, that literally go from A to almost Z, Madam Speaker. The other concern that the incumbent carrier says is that the bill's preamble mentions and references the simplicity of the procurement process for the Federal Health Employees Benefits Program and ignores and fails to acknowledge that the qualifying application process for the Federal Health Employees Program is quite rigorous and provides an extensive review. I want to say that 3 of the 4 companies that submitted proposals in the last Guam Health Insurance RFP are already pre-qualified by the federal government and are currently providing insurance to federal employees and retirees. In other words, 75% of the bidders have passed the scrutiny of the federal government's review process for admission as a vendor to provide health insurance. So when we say and put in the bill that you would qualify if you qualify to provide services under the Federal Health Insurance Program, we are availing ourselves of the benefit of the expertise of the federal government that scrutinizes this. So it's not as if it's like we're just saying, if you do this, you can do this. They're saying this is a rigorous process, and we're going to say, if you're going to participate in the GovGuam process and you qualify to participate in that rigorous process, we're going to say you can do so in ours as well. So I think that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, yet they testify that it make it sound like it's a bad thing. The other thing is that the application for the federal health insurance process also requires a process conducted by OPM, Office of Personnel Management, which is staffed by healthcare insurance professionals and certified actuaries who review new applicants' qualifications prior to being allowed to participate in the federal health insurance program. Well, we know that our health insurance companies and our insurance companies are monitored by the Guam Insurance Commissioner, who must review and attest the offers, reserves, cash bank holdings, and in addition to that, they also must clear review by the National Association of Insurance Commissioners requirements for coverage against policies written. So in addition to the review process by the Attorney General, this process that we're outlining to ensure that we're going to get qualified vendors to participate also requires that they work with the Insurance Commissioner and they validate that independent financial audits and financial strength ratings of independent third-party organizations are scrutinized by the Office of the Insurance Commissioner and consultant members of the negotiating team. So once again, Madam Speaker, they're saying, here's the process, it's not good enough for those guys, why are you making it automatic for us? Because you're telling us that qualification standard there is good for that, you qualified as well, and so we're going to allow you access to our market and service our employees. And in addition to that, Madam Speaker, because the Insurance Commissioner works with the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, they, as experts in this, actually have a more stringent review process for these health insurance companies and insurance companies that can do business in the territory of Guam, that they must pass the NAIC. And those are even more stringent in terms of financial strength ratings than the Federal Health Insurance Program. We're requiring that as part of this bill, that they also meet the test of our local insurance commissioner, which links its review to the National Association of Insurance Commissioners as well. So we've got that additional criteria that they have to meet to ensure the viability of these companies that we will invite and allow to provide services to the Gulf Guam Health Insurance uh, program to service its employees and retirees. Then they also say, well, you know, you're bypassing the procurement process uh, that we have under the procurement law. And we're saying, yes, we are. We are setting up this brand new process that allows for a bid system to work, and that we will work with this, what is outlined here. The bill, as originally introduced, went through the public hearing. We received extensive comments from the Attorney General and from the General Services Administration. And the issues that they had relating to the concerns that they raised in terms of this process, its compatibility with the procurement process, have all been reviewed by the Attorney General and have all been integrated. And we made some numerous changes within the bill that incorporated all of the concerns, and I once again has stressed, all of the concerns of the Attorney General of Guam with regards to the bill and this new system of procuring health insurance for Gulf Guam employees, that they are confident that this bill will be implementable, number one. Number two, will be consistent with the current procurement process wherever there is different as put in the bill from the current statutory structure, and that this process can move forward quite quickly, and so we have made those accommodations to them. They also talk about the fact that you know, that multiple carriers don't automatically assure lower rates, and in fact, industry studies have shown that multiple carriers may increase costs due to the pricing adjustments for uncertainty and adverse selection. In health insurance procurement, Madam Speaker, and I've had over 20 years of senior level health insurance management experience before I joined the legislative body, Madam Speaker. In health insurance, adverse selection occurs as a result of the difference between two insurance company products offering that drives the subscriber behavior. So you can have adverse selection because of competing product designs and so forth, Madam Speaker. In the case of the government of Guam, adverse selection has occurred only because medical coverage offered by health insurance companies have been different. So that if you have a richer benefit schedule on one and a lower benefit schedule on the other, the sick people will go to the rich benefit schedule. It's as simple as that. So that's adverse selection. It is compounded in terms of the impact of adverse selection when you have different rate structure levels, so that the contribution rate for the richer benefit schedule and the contribution rate for the lower benefit schedule are disparate. And therefore, then you further drive business and adverse selection to the richer benefit schedule, which may have a higher contribution level. That's what's happened, Madam Speaker. And then that's exactly what we saw when retirees migrated from Staywell, for example, when we had multiple carriers within the Gov Guam program who had a lower benefit schedule and greater co-payments out of pocket, to GMHP, which has a richer benefit schedule with lower out-of-pocket payments, but almost at the same contribution level, if not just a little bit more for GMHP. So the sicker guys went to GMHP, adverse selection. You can't survive in that environment. And that's what's caused the Gov Guam Health Program to have an exodus of insurance carriers. Not really, Madam Speaker, because they just had too many. It's that inequity in the design and the impact of the rate structure as well as the design of the benefit schedule that forced people into one over the other and put an undue burden on the one offering the richer benefit schedule. Now, Bill 81 resolves this matter by requiring that the medical coverage by the health insurance companies be essentially the same benefit schedule. So you have the same benefit schedule, you have the same contribution schedule. So now it's a matter of, once again, choice. Who do you choose? Do you choose the guy who has a better access to specialists? That's a function of administration and pricing, but they all get the same amount of money. And so if you have a retiree that goes to one, he gets more money that goes with him, so there's no adverse selection. and no impact on the differing contribution levels. So the issue that they say is going to reoccur has been resolved by the way that we have designed the Guam Health Insurance Plan over the last couple of years. Then according to their internal and industry, this is Select Care's testimony, according to their internal and industry standard rating protocols, rates are higher when multiple carriers are present, so we question the integrity and validity of the analysis made by the Office of Finance and Budget. Furthermore, we question the credibility of non-exclusive rates as the source of those rates. What we did, Madam Speaker, is we took real-life data. We have had the benefit of expertise in the Office of Finance and Budget that not only includes some of the maybe dated but still valid healthcare management experience I have, plus very recent risk analysis, plan design, plan structure, and benefit and rate structure design expertise that is present within the Office of Finance and Budget. The director of the Office of Finance and Budget has multiple years in senior capacity of rate design, plan design, rate structure design, and so forth for health insurance companies providing benefits to commercial as well as government entities as customers of the health insurance company. In addition, another member of our staff has done many auditing work with companies dealing with health insurance companies. So these individuals are young, they're bright, they've had the experience, and we've applied those experience to the benefit of the government of Guam and to the benefit of the taxpayers of Guam in coming up with this new rate design process as well as new procurement process that will guarantee savings from what we are currently paying, Madam Speaker. And the claims and experience of the employees and the retirees along with the medical trend dictates the rates. It's your claims experience that dictates it, and we have taken the claims experience that we have changed over the years to give us that usable data. We've had much data in the past. Some of it's been usable and not usable because of the experience we've had in the Office of Finance and Budget and doing these analysis. We have had changes in the law which required the health insurance company that provides service to the Guam employees to give us claims data in a usable format so that we can look at those claims data and make our analysis. And that's what drives the rates. That and nothing else, Madam Speaker. And that any other increases to the rates are arbitrary and have no merit, which means the company is only padding its rates to protect against any losses. And Bill 82 removes the padding or the fluff in the rates that has resulted in what we have seen, that the analysis we've had in the presentation of these bills in the last couple of years have been validated when PACA kicked in and the medical loss ratio went into effect. When we said we were going to save money and they said, no, you're going to lose money, you're going to increase your costs, we've had millions of dollars in rebates over the last, $18 million over the last two contract periods, Madam Speaker. That's how much money that has had to come back because the rates were inflated and designed so that it protects against losses. And that's what we've seen. And that's really where you can say, well, where's the proof? There's the proof. When we first brought you this concept of moving away from the current process we had, and we said it was going to result in savings, everybody said no. Everybody said, show me the proof. Well, we have the proof now when PACA kicked in, and we've had a rebate of $8.2 million in the last contract years. And had we included the first quarter, and that's $8.2 million. Our claims data running now that we've looked at, again, indicate we're going to be north of $5 million in rebates once again, because once again, we went with the old way of procuring health insurance and the process that's occurred there, and it's going to result, again, in millions of dollars that are going to be returned to the government of Guam in the current rating scheme. That's what we're trying to avoid, Madam Speaker. We need that money on a cash flow basis to have the government of Guam, work with its challenges of the financial resources that we have. We don't need it sitting in the health insurance company's bank account, and 15 months later they give it back to us when we do the claims data analysis. And I think that the way we've done this, where we've capped that limit based on the current medical loss ratio experience that we have, the 15 months trailing data, we know is going to result in a bid, and we're saying that it's got to be lower than what that trend data is. And that's really all it is, Madam Speaker. So this idea that we don't know, we do know. We do know. And we've been validated in our suppositions, in our presentations, in our projections, by the experience that we've had, Madam Speaker. In addition, Madam Speaker, this is the rebate that we get, Madam Speaker. In addition, Madam Speaker, the retention rate that the health insurance company that participates, thanks to PACA right now in terms of providing health insurance to consumers, is 15%. That they get to retain 15% for overhead, administration, and profit. And so, Madam Speaker, of the total premium, for example, Madam Speaker, that we've had for Guam Health Insurance of $74 million, that the health insurance company automatically gets to keep 15% to administer the program, pay the claims, process the enrollments, make the changes of status, and so forth. Not pay the claims yet, just internal administrative costs, management, overhead, and so forth. Madam Speaker, of the $74 million, that equates to almost $8 million, over $8 million for overhead, administration, and profit. Then you have the remaining 85% of the total premium dollar. And it is from that 85% that is reserved for claims, that we've gotten our rebate back of another $8 million. So we overpaid by $8 million, but they get to keep the entire 15%, even though they overpaid it, really. And we know that there's a portion of that 15% that is incorporated into that 85%. And we really should be recouping a portion of that 15. But that's allowable, that they retain that and so forth. So, Madam Speaker, over the last 2.5, 3 years of contract, we've actually had to have $20 million have been validated by the claims data required to be submitted by law when the incumbent carrier says, you've made so many changes in the bill, you've had these for reform. That is correct. And one of that is usable claims data. And when we've gotten that and we've moved forward on it and received the information, we saw and we validated for ourselves what we knew has always been the case, that we've been overpaying. Now, they cite the fact that, and we'll go into DOA's testimony and so forth, but Bill 81, Madam Speaker, would stop all that. It'll continue to allow insurance companies to retain 15% for overhead, administration, and profit, but it caps how much we will pay, Madam Speaker. There's where the savings occur. We know we're going to pay less than what we're paying today, because of the fact, Madam Speaker, that we're capping it below what we're spending today based on the trailing 15 months data. So we know we're going to save money. They said, what if nobody bids? That's one of the I guess, red herring out there. Well, you're going to put it on a bid process. What if nobody? Do you really think, Madam Speaker, that the incumbent carrier is going to say, I'm not going to bid. I'm going to walk away from this contract. And what about all the 4 other bidders out there that have expressed an interest and actually submitted bids the last time through the RFP process, who now support this new process and say it's a better way, we have more certainty, we have greater confidence in the process, we know we're going to be treated fairly, we know bias is going to be removed, we know politics is going to be removed under the process outlined in Bill 81. You think with that kind of testimony that they've had and they've articulated, that they're not going to bid on this thing? I doubt it. I think we're going to get the incumbent carrier bidding for it because they know the program. They know ins and outs. Even though the process has changed, they still have an advantage because they still have the most complete data and behavioral statistics in terms of where these people are going in terms to request health care and to access health care. Plus, they have a greater access to networks within the system out there that they have in place. So they don't have to replicate and duplicate things. So they're going to have even a cost advantage of designing their program because everything for them is status quo. They don't have to work up new contracts and so forth. So I just doubt that this idea that, man, nobody's going to bid and you better be careful because you're going to risk Guam health insurance for the employees and retirees. I don't think so. And if nobody bids because they say it's too low, then we'll get an idea of where we got to go, and we can make that change very quickly, Madam Speaker. The way that we've outlined in terms of when things have to be submitted and the way that this process can be efficiently deployed, we can go out for bids twice before open enrollment comes up if nobody bids the first time around. We can do that. In addition, Madam Speaker, the current contract process for the Guam health insurance has what they call the participating requirement, so that if you don't make your profit goals or your financial goals in this fiscal year, if you get to participate in the next fiscal year, a participating provision clause in terms of the contract, participating contract clause, allows you to recoup your loss this year with a rate adjustment next year. So this idea that we're not going to bid because we might lose our shirts, well, if you continue to work with the program, work with the government of Guam, you can actually begin to recoup some of the losses you may have if you don't price point your stuff, your product that way, or your enrollment is not as robust as you pointed out. But you can still continue to participate in the program and recoup yourself. And I think the design of the program will allow you to do that if you so choose to avail yourself of the participating contract provision that is made available here, which is different than what we have now. So, Madam Speaker, that I think is the gist of this. The design of this process, Madam Speaker, once again, is open, fair, unbiased, unpolitical, and allows for, again, a rate design program and a plan design program. People, both DOA tout out this Lewis and Ellis study that it said we should only have one carrier, and that if we had one carrier, that we would save money. But, Madam Speaker, the difference, and they're saying we ought to hang our hat on this 6-year-old Lewis and Ellis study. And that's why we're all wrong on Bill 81, because the Lewis and Ellis study said the way to go is one carrier and we'll reduce rates. Well, when you take a look at it, what has been the result of the data when we said under the Office of Finance and Budget and proposed the different process, the one we're advocating for Bill 81, that we will save money, that we are overpricing, that we are overpaying the health insurance premiums based upon the experience of the data that we have and the claims that are filed and the cost to run that program. So we said that, and when we actually had the data and the experience come in, we were correct. It was validated. We overpaid by close to $20 million over the last 2.5 contract years. Undisputed. We got a rebate. People got checks in the mail. People cashed them. People spend them. Real money. Because why? Because as we said, we're overpaying and the prices are inflated. The Lewis and Ellis study, which DOA is saying we got to follow because they say this, and what they're saying is you will save money with one carrier. What has been the experience after we went into a single carrier? We've increased our cost. We've increased the cost, and the process that they've had in place in terms of their analysis and the way that they've done the negotiations has resulted in increases rather than decreases, even though we know, based on the claims data, that we were overpaying. And we were never able to capture and force the reduction in rates based upon the negotiating process. We've lost that negotiating process every single time. And they said, oh, but 1 year we had a decrease, that we reduced the cost by 7.5 million. You know why we reduced it by 7.5? Because the previous year we had a 40% increase. And it was just like in your eye kind of stuff to miss that. You couldn't miss a 40% increase and then saying, oh my God. So yes, we did receive a $7.5 million decrease, but that was after a 40% increase, and then we increased the year after that. So we know that this current negotiation process hasn't resulted In what Lewis and Ellis, which both now the Hayes study is kind of saying, oh yeah, that's what they said. They don't really endorse it. They just said that's what it said. But DOA is saying, no, you paid money to have that analysis done, and therefore you should follow it. I don't want to follow that anymore because their analysis was wrong and flawed. The conditions have changed. The plan design structure have changed. The premium allocation structure has changed. When the Lewis and Ellis studies came in, we had a different rate for retirees and a different rate for the actives, or the same rate, I'm sorry. Now we have a different rate for retiree because we know they use more health care and the health company deserves to have more health plan dollars to pay for those claims. We designed it and we changed it. And that's why we have better experience right now. So, Madam Speaker, I know I'm long on this thing. Again, I do want to say that if you take a look at the bill and you take a look at what's in the bill, Madam Speaker, you will see that we have indeed reduced the costs to the GovGuam employee and reduced the costs to the government of Guam and the taxpayers of Guam in terms of our contribution of premium dollars to the GovGuam health insurance program for government employees and their retirees and families, Madam Speaker. So we know that if the bill goes into effect, we move forward on it, that the bids that will come in will in fact be lower than what we are spending today. We know that. And so, Madam Speaker, I ask my colleagues for that additional consideration, and I will, remain open to answering questions, of course, as always, on this bill, and then I'll reserve additional comments for closing, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Senator. On the motions, anyone who would like to speak? That was a very comprehensive explanation of Bill 81. No questions? Okay, everybody's thumbs up? Okay, so I'm going to call back the speaker then to do his closing. Would you like a glass of water? Okay.
Madam Speaker, one of the things we were very concerned, and this was really echoed by my colleagues during the last debate, in terms of how do we design this new program that takes into effect the challenges that our GovGuam employees have. The fact that everything continues to rise. Cost of health insurance, number one, which we're trying to resolve by Bill 81. Gas, food, water, power, everything's going up. Wages are remaining stagnant. The design of the program have put into place greater deductibles for the GovGuam health employees. And yet, the GovGuam employees have had their increments frozen, have had their merit increases frozen, Madam Speaker. So while prices continue to rise, the financial pressure on the GovGuam employee has continued to rise as well. And their ability to deal with them have continued to decline because we haven't been able to increase their wages and we've frozen their increments, Madam Speaker. And so one of the things we were very conscious of, how do we put something in place that helps this GovGuam employee and his family access health care and remove some of the barriers? As you know, the GovGuam health insurance program, by its very nature, required deductibles to be put in place. And the current plan, there's a $1,500 deductible for the 1,500 plan and a $2,000 deductible for the 2,000 plan. That's your out-of-pocket costs that you have to pay out before health insurance kicks in on the major benefits. There are certain designs where some of the primary benefits, such as well baby care, you don't have to do that, such as an annual physical, you don't have to meet your deductible. And these are some of the improvements that we've seen in the Guam Health Insurance Program that have come back to us because we've seen how much we've been overpaying. And so they've come back and say, we'll remove first dollar deductible barriers for routine health care and things like that. But the major stuff still requires you to pay $1,500 if you're single and $2,000 if you're family, and $4,000 for families in order to get health insurance to kick in. And so what we've done with Bill 80 by the redesign of the premium allocations and the cap is had enough savings based upon the medical loss data ratio that we've had so that now we will contribute $750 to an individual towards his deductible. So now he already has half his deductible met and $1,500 for a family. So once again, Madam Speaker, this is our attempt to help the GovGuam employee, and in this case, access health care, Madam Speaker, which includes and of course impacts performance in the workplace. Peace of mind that you don't have to come up with $1,500. That you now have your government, because it can't give you a pay raise, will contribute this towards your health savings plan to have you access it to meet your deductible. And so, again, Madam Speaker, this is, once again, something that we're doing in terms of designing this thing. Madam Speaker, the current process have us paying $74,445,000 in premiums. That is the premiums that are being paid. Bill 81 caps that number at $68,985,440, which is an automatic savings. We will get bidders that will bid below the $74 million that we're spending today. So we know that. The current process, Madam Speaker, has resulted in a sole source contract awarded under a continuing provision clause because of the protest under the way that we have it now, with no new rules and regulations adopted and passed by this body. They're working on them, but they're not there. And I think that if we proceed down that road without that in place, we're going to go and find ourselves once again in protest city, Madam Speaker. And so the qualification is based on the insurer's business, license standing, certificate of authority regulation, and bidding at or below the minimum limit, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, those are the major difference, I think, in terms of why I feel and why I'm confident that this new system that we've placed under the Bill 82 will result in savings and choice to the GovGuam employees, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, the other thing I wanted to address, of course, is the fact that, the DOA testimony has mentioned all of these things, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when we look at what it costs to run the program, they're saying it's going to be more expensive and all that. Madam Speaker, you know that the medical claims administration, management, enrollment, all of the things that a GovGuam carrier would have 15% for to operate, that we have those same costs at the Department of Public Health and Social Services in working and processing Medicare and Medicaid payments. That for FY 2014, Madam Speaker, that the executive branch requests for MIP and Medicaid claims administration, that the total claims that will be paid out of Medicare MIP for FY 2004, $55 million. The overhead and administration costs for that division of the Department of Public Health only cost us $1.8 million, or 3.36%. That's what it's costing. On the health insurance side, for the GovGuam health insurance provider, of the total premium of $74 million, they get to keep $8 million for overhead and administration, 15%. Look at the difference. There's where your cost is at, Madam Speaker. And if you look back at FY 2012, we have the same. So we know that there's built-in profit structures in the 15% as well. as well as what the profit structure had been prevalent in the 85% for claims administration, which thankfully through PACA we're able to recoup and give back to our consumers, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, you know, the bill is long. Probably the longest part of the bill is the legislative intent. And there are members of the body that says, you know, all that is in there is, you know, room for argument. And okay, it's room for differences of opinion, and I wanted to ensure that the legislative record reflected what the intent is and the experience that we've had. But it has resulted in, of course, you know, attacks on the intent part rather than the substantive part of the bill. And so I know that, you know, should we keep it in there? I would like to, but I think it may also focus the debate on the substantive portion. So in the interest of ensuring that we kind of do away with the differences of opinion, that we go with the substantive version. And so I would like to then, Madam Speaker, despite the many long hours I spent writing the legislative intent, the 2 years I spent writing legislative intent, that I will make a motion to ensure that we focus on what we're trying to do and the benefits we're trying to give to the Guam Health employee retirees and their families. And that is savings and choice. And so I would make the motion to delete the legislative intent.
On the motion to delete the legislative intent, which is on pages 1 to 6, and that means, and to renumber the sections then. So, on the amendment, any objections? No objections, so ordered.
So, Madam Speaker, now we don't have a difference of opinion. And so, again, I ask my colleagues, you take a look at the analysis we've given to you. We've laid it out. I think it's solid, it's verified, it's been, once again, I think, proven that what we have said in the past is in fact what we are experiencing under the current process. It's there, Madam Speaker, and again, I know that I didn't get any questions on the floor, but if you have any questions at all, Madam Speaker, I ask that you present them to me. I'll respond to them as the best I can. You have the analysis done for you. You can do the analysis yourself, or you can have somebody else look at it, and then we can work on it. But again, Madam Speaker, I think we need to change direction on this thing, and I think that the right direction in this case is what I've asked my colleagues for their favorable consideration on in Bill 81. So thank you, and Sidusmasi, Madam Speaker. I'd like to move then that Bill 81 is substituted by the Committee on General Government Operations be placed in the third reading file. And Madam Speaker, because there is some time sensitivity nature to this, I ask that we vote on this bill also before we recess this afternoon.
After I had asked if anyone wanted to speak, nobody raised their hand, so, but the Vice Speaker did when you were speaking, so Vice Speaker, since you're the second.
Well, I was reading the DOA letter and the testimony and objection, and it was all about the intent, and I think the major substantive part of the bill is excellent. If we just remove that intent and just focus on the bill, it's an excellent bill, and there's very little argument to the bill itself, though we may differ on the history.
Yes.
So that was and he took care of it, and so that's why I had no objection.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Speaker. So on the motion then to send Bill 81-32 to the third reading file, and for this body to vote on it before the end of the day today. Without any objection, so ordered. Bill number 72-32LS. Recognize the author, Senator Tony Adams.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I ask that Bill 72-32 be sent down to the third reading file. I'd like to speak on it, please.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Bill 72-32 is an act to add a new section 2228 to Chapter 22 of 15 GCA relative to including digital assets in a decedent's estate. And what this does, Madam Speaker, to date, 5 states have enacted laws that regulate the digital assets with regard to estate planning. And as of January this year, another 13 states have legislations pending to address this issue. Electronic documents, Madam Speaker, as we know, they vary in nature, and this could include emails, music, video files, ebooks, or intellectual property of a deceased individual, and should be treated as property of a decedent's estate. I'd just like to make one amendment, Madam Speaker, and what it is the original bill addresses the issue of electronically stored documents, and this amendment will address the issue of websites, blogs, social networking, and messaging accounts. And what it is what will happen is that it's just to ensure that the decedent's any emails or email accounts or websites would be also a part of this. If I can just have a 1-minute recess just to pass out the amendment.
Do you have a copy of that amendment?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Can you just read it for us and let us see whether there's something that might be too
Okay, Madam
substantive
Speaker, it's
or not?
what it does is it'll add a new section 2229 is added to Chapter 22 of 15 GC, and it'll just go digital accounts. The personal representative of an estate shall have the power, where otherwise authorized, to take control of, conduct, continue, or terminate any accounts of a deceased person on any social networking website, any blogging or short message service website, or any email service websites.
Is there anyone who would like to have a copy of that amendment? Senator Yamashita, you have a comment or a question? Okay, you have the floor. Would you like have them give you the copy to
No, it's
refer
okay.
to?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is the question, and if the author would yield. I am absolutely not savvy with all this technology stuff that surrounds us these days. And I have continuously found myself in a situation where people pretend to be me. And messages and email is always being sent. I mean, incredible things are happening where people call the office and say, but it came from you, but it didn't come from me. And so, as a matter of fact, I've tried closing all my Facebook accounts and everything that I thought I should be doing to be active in social networking. So my question, Madam Speaker, is this. How do we ensure that what we're proposing here and in the amendment that's being proffered right now, we're going to make sure that certain accounts are closed. We're going to make sure that, the whole measure in itself wants to make sure that digital assets are included in whatever conversations are happening after a person dies. But the amendment now says that accounts will be closed. How do we make sure that, first of all, the digital assets are true and legitimate? And then how do we make sure that somebody has the authority to do that? And I'm sure, I would think there are processes in place, but I don't know that that is reflected here. And I think we will want to make sure that those steps are described.
Senator, do you yield to the question?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if you look at Section 1 on the bill, and it lists exactly what the custodian shall provide to the personal representative of an estate of a deceased person. And what it does is that when it gives them that authority to close these accounts that I believe that are that they know about. And the section that I'm adding just adds the amendment that I'm adding just adds any social networking sites or email accounts, including any digital assets that individual may have.
Senator, was he able to answer your question?
So, Madam Speaker, then am I correct in now understanding that the person will actually have to have a written request made or carried out, and it has to be accompanied by the death certificate. So, I guess a new step in that whole process and getting ready for death would be a statement saying that all of my digital assets may be addressed by my personal representative. So that would be a new step to the process of ensuring everything's taken care of upon death. Am I correct in understanding the?
Senator?
Yeah,
Trujillo?
that's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. On the amendment, or would anyone like to see the amendment, read the amendment? Yes, why don't we take a brief recess then? Legislature is back in session. Everyone now should have a copy of the amendment. Is there anybody who would like to speak on the amendment? Are the objection, I'm sorry, Speaker Pangilinan, you'd like to speak on it?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So again, Madam Speaker, this kind of narrows it because I was a little worried in terms of, you know, just the digital asset and what that entails and so forth. And so if we're now saying that the only power that the personal representative would have would be over the social networking side, the blogs and the email addresses basically, and text message addresses and so forth, that it doesn't extend to things like, you know, digital bank accounts, internet bank accounts and things like that, brokerage accounts and so forth, that this is only designed for the social networking sites.
Senator, do you yield to that question?
Yes, that's right, Madam Speaker. Yes.
Okay. What was that, Therese? So on the amendment, no objections? So ordered. On the motion to send Bill 72-32 through third reading file without any objection, so ordered. Bill number 58-32, and Senator Tony Anda, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Bill 5832 is a threefold. First, the bill makes technical changes to the Protection of Minors and Student Rights Act. And secondly, it allows the access to public safety and emergency medical personnel to student directory information. And third, it exempts mental health screening that is done under the provisions of the Individual with Disabilities Act from the provisions of the Mental Health Screening Child Protection Informed Consent Act. And Madam Speaker, I'd like to request that Bill 5832 as substituted by the Committee on Education, Public Library, and Women Affairs be moved to the third reading file. I'd like to speak on the motion, please.
Yes, you may proceed, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And what this does is that it's an act to amend Section 6602 and 6603 and to recodify 6603 to 6121 and to add a new 6703 to Chapter 6 of 17 GCA relative to the protection of student information. And like I said, Madam Speaker, that this bill is a threefold and that it addresses three issues. And I'd like to thank Rob Millay and Rebecca Perez from DOE and the people from GPD and Assistant AG Carol Hinkle-Sanchez, and also Madam President Mary Alcada for the work and effort that made this bill possible. And subsequent to the completion of the substitute bill, Madam Speaker, my staff met with the President of GCC and her staff, and we have agreed to the following technical amendments, and I'd like to just make some technical amendments here. We can go to page 3, line 7, and add the word minor before students. Page 3, line 7.
Page 3.
Add the word minor just
7
before students.
of the minor student.
Right. And then again on page 3, line 12. To replace parent or guardian with next of kin. So instead of parent or guardian, it'll be next of kin.
Okay, well, I thought there was the same one. Let's take the first one then. To add the word minor before student on page 3, line 7. No objections, ordered. And then the second is on page 3, line 12, is to delete parent or guardian and replace with next of kin without any objections. So ordered. Okay, Senator, you may continue.
And then on page 3, line 13, Madam Speaker, will be Add after the word consent by the words, comma, by this paragraph. So on line 13, after consent, comma, by this paragraph, comma.
And then continue on with maybe. So,
Right, and then continue on, exactly.
okay, so page 3, line 13, after the word consent, at comma, by this paragraph, or the new words, may be released. Without any objections, so ordered.
And then again on page 3, lines 17 and 18, after the word provided, replaced by the words, after the word provided, the word will be they. It'll be replaced with the word they. So it'll be agencies provided that they release, that they are released, and then
That they are released. So you want to remove that, the records?
right, that the records released and the manner in which such records. So that'll be striked out and just replaced with they.
Well, provided they
Right.
are released.
No, provided they are released, and then the next word that will be replaced will be conform to pursuant. So it'll read, child protective agencies provided they are released pursuant to the provisions of 20 USC.
Provided, wait, provided they are released
Pursuant to the provisions.
pursuant to the provisions.
Yes.
Okay, clerks, were you able to get that? Okay, so on that amendment, without any objections, so ordered.
And that would take care of the amendments, Madam Speaker.
Okay. So on the motions, Senator Yamashita, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if the author would yield to this question, I'm just having a hard time processing what page 3, line 25, section 3 really means. That the exemption of IDEA surveys, that any surveys that are conducted pursuant to the Disabilities Education Act are exempt from the provisions of this article. I'm having a hard time knowing really what that means, Madam Speaker, and if he would yield and help me understand that.
Senator, do you yield to the question?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, that is that's the current statute as it is now. It was just the underlines where we made the changes.
Senator Yamashita, I know I really didn't answer your question.
So if I have someone sends home a survey about my son with disabilities, that information is not released to, I don't know. I guess maybe I could, between now and the voting time, I can figure it out, perhaps.
What
I don't
we
understand.
could do is then, if the senator does not object, is to set this aside, get the answers to this, and then we'll never lose its place in the agenda.
Yes, I know it's the current
Yes.
law, but
Senator Ada,
But if it's current law and he's not amending the current law, then I guess I just need to go figure out what the current law is. So it's okay. I'll figure it out. Thank you.
okay. So on the motion then to send Bill 58-32 to third reading file without any objections, so ordered. Bill number 16-32. Recognize Senator Respicio.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill number 16-32 in the third reading file.
And that is as introduced, right? Okay. And would you like to speak?
Yeah, very quickly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this bill seeks to rezone certain parcels of property and lots near the former Naval Air Station Agana in the municipality of Tizan, Barrigada from agricultural zone A to light industrial zone M1, and to change the reference of limited industrial to light industrial. I want to thank Speaker Ben for hearing this bill, but more importantly for doing all of the due diligence required of law, where the Department of Land Management has to review all of these rezoning measures to make sure that there are no negative impacts, and if there are such negative impacts to the legislative action, that they would have to report that to us accordingly. And thankfully, Land Management responded in the affirmative, as well as the Guam Water Works Authority, all saying that this action is consistent with the land use, permitted land uses for that area. Madam Speaker, the reason why I introduced this bill is because when we passed Public Law 31-198, where it said that any properties returned to the government of Guam or to the people of Guam, or whatever the case may be, that if those properties are not zoned, which they weren't, that they would have to follow the majority of the contiguous zones in that area. And so at that time, this bill was being addressed, and those decisions were being made. And finally, when the bill was signed into law, this property that we're seeking to zone to industrial, light industrial, Madam Speaker, was actually a permitted use, and by this Public Law 31-198, that M1 zone went all the way down to agricultural zone because the majority of the contiguous zoning abutting that property was unzoned. So all of those properties went down to agriculture, and then we've had to subsequently go in and address those changes, if not through the legislature, but through the Guam Land Use Commission. And so I offered this bill. I introduced this in the last term, but then again, there are requirements of the new law that requires the Department of Land Management to review the bill, so we know exactly what those impacts are. And so I submit this to the body for its consideration. And again, I thank the Chairman of Land for hearing this bill and for reporting this bill out.
On the motion, is there anyone who would like to speak? There being none, so on the motion then to send Bill 16-32, CRR to the third reading file without any objections, so ordered. Bill number 18-32, Senator Respicio, you recognize.
Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill 18-32, and it's an act to appropriate the sum of $392,162.17 from anticipated general fund revenues for FY 2013 for the outstanding debt balance owed, including principal and interest, for the completion of the Guam Public Market Redevelopment Project, Phase 2, Department of Commerce, project number 320-5-1008-L-AGN, including change order number 1 and change order number 2, and I move that this be placed in the voting file.
On the third reading file, and is there anyone who would like to speak on the motion?
Just,
Oh,
yeah, I'd like to,
you
yeah,
want to continue
yeah.
to speak? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So on the motion, Madam Speaker, again, I want to thank the Chairman of Appropriations, Speaker Pangilinan, for hearing this bill, and also I want to thank our colleagues for what we've done in previous legislatures, and I guess the resounding theme of this week's agenda is never give up. And this is one instance where when I was first alerted to the situation by the owners who, the construction company Hanjin that built the Chamorro village, and the recognition that they were owed some outstanding payments from that construction project, there was no recourse or no remedy for them at the time. And so I introduced a bill because I was told that if we introduce a bill and get the authorization, that the last administration would make the payment. And so that's what we did. We provided for the appropriation in that prior fiscal year. And when we provided for the appropriation, they said that the issue was cash, so they never paid it. And so this company's been extremely patient, and so they again made the offer that if the government of Guam just moved after 16, 17 years and make the payment, they'll forego on any of the interest, and they made that as a final offer. Otherwise, they would seek the principal and the interest. And at the time we were discussing this, Madam Speaker, the president of the Chamorro Affairs, he recognized that this project was satisfactorily completed. The director of Department of Public Works recognized that this project was satisfactorily completed, and that services were rendered. Nobody is disputing the fact that work was done on this project. What the Attorney General's position, after recognizing that this is a debt to the government, the Attorney General came out and said that they missed their window of opportunity to go to a Government's Claims Act to seek the remedy through that. And so if you understand their plight over the last, and I believe it's 18 years, they were told year after year after year, don't worry, we'll get you paid, we'll get the payment done. And I guess it's because this company just kept saying, just pay me on the principal, pay me on the principal. And when they presented themselves that way to the government of Guam, and the government of Guam recognizing that this is an extremely patient vendor, like with any other vendors that are patient, they don't get paid, unfortunately, Madam Speaker. And so when it finally came to a situation where they have to bring closure to this issue, the legislature got involved. And so we provided for the appropriation. That didn't work. And then the next thing that I said maybe we should do is go through the tax credit mechanism. It's worked for some instances here in the past. And so when I introduced a bill to provide for tax credits to offset this obligation, again, the legislature passed that bill recognizing that this is a rightful debt and it's our obligation to pay it. When that bill passed, it was vetoed because of the claim that because we securitize all of the business privilege taxes and because of the bond that was borrowed, we cannot use the tax payments, tax credit mechanism. So that bill didn't work. And so we tried again to provide for an appropriation, which we did, but then yet they're saying that cash was an issue. And so this again recognizes that because the administration is collecting beyond what it's projected, that certainly they can find the monies necessary to finally bring the much needed closure to this debt. And so what I submit to my colleagues, Madam Speaker, is one, do we recognize that this is a legitimate debt, which I believe we do because our legislative history has demonstrated that. Number two, will the governor and the administration recognize that this is a debt and that like tax refunds that need to be paid because it's a debt, that I wonder in this case, Madam Speaker, if we do pass this bill to provide for the payments to be made from the anticipated revenues of this current fiscal year, I'm wondering if that the governor gets this obligation or authorization, if he would also see it as an obligation and make good on that. And so this bill, if it becomes law, will be the mechanism for the government of Guam to bring closure to this decade or so issue. And so I ask our colleagues for support, and I appreciate the ability for me to be persistent in this and many other cases. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, recognize Speaker Pangilinan.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I certainly admire and recognize persistence.
I learned from you.
I really am a little torn on this, Madam Speaker. Number one, because of course the length of time. But, you know, what provides me with a source of turmoil on this thing is just the obligation that this government has. What is our moral obligation to people who do work on good faith with the government of Guam, expect to be paid, don't press their case based upon the reliance and the assurance of government officials who said, don't worry, we'll process it, we'll work with you. That's why, Madam Speaker, when this matter first rose, a few of us had worked with the companies on this. And we actually got it to the point where the administration, after doing what I thought were legal research and said, this is owed, we're going to owe it. They dug up all the resources, all the records. The company presented its records. And again, you know, where hope was dim, hope was reignited when the administration said, all right, we're going to, and we have the authority to pay for this. And so we felt that, okay, you know, how it gets paid or who pays it does not matter more than the fact that we meet our moral obligation to our vendors. And it is only when, once again, the administration came back and said, we're not going to pay for it. We're not going to move forward. We have the authority, but we don't want to, or whatever reason. And then that's when this body responds to, you know, the injustice created by that. But, you know, I look at this, and this is what, you know, 1995, I guess, is the project, 1991. You know, but Madam Speaker, you know, while we're debating, are we going to resurrect this debt from the stale date side of it and bring it back to life by this legislation? And how do we treat others in the same manner? You know, and maybe the first way to cure injustice for all is to cure injustice for one. But I am concerned because we have bills in this body that would say, you know, different bills in this body also that says when you don't claim your money by the government of Guam within 5 years, you know, it just cheats to the government forever. Now we have proposals to say within 2 years. And yet here we are, something since 1991, and we're going to say, we're going to pay you for this, but if you don't claim your money after 1 year, you're going to lose it forever. Shouldn't we have bills for those people when they come back and say so? You know, I know of one gentleman right now, and that, you know, that has not been able to, it's his refund. He can't get his refund because he was off island, living off island, even though he did his due diligence. He wrote the DOA, he was told you have to submit this, he submitted all that, but because DOA did not perform administratively in terms of getting his refund checks, it went back to the government, and they're saying now the IRS regulations say we can't give you a new refund. Even though it's money he has, and he didn't even want to turn it over, but because of the administrative process and the gaps created by that, he can't access that. You know, yet that's the same situation. Because of the administrative process have expired, the legal process have expired, and again, you know, we're dealing with a sophisticated company here that had all the legal resources. The only mistake is they relied on the government of Guam officials who assured them that they will be paid. And so this body and members of this body feel that there is a moral obligation, and I recognize that as well, Madam Speaker. So I just wanted to kind of frame that, what we're trying to do here with some of the other initiatives that we're kind of looking at. And I'd hope we're prepared to then respond to those individuals who may be Tulucea and Tan Maria, who now say, hey, I want my money back, you know. And actually that was their money, as well as this, of course, because they performed the job and they performed the service satisfactorily. But, you know, I just, like again, You know, the question, the debate we have is, you know, if the intent is that we're going to cure injustice for all by beginning with this injustice for one, then I'm ready to tackle all of those other issues so that even though we spent those people's money, they come in and claim it, you know, 10 years later, 20 years later, that we're going to resolve that issue as we are trying to attempt with this one. Thank you.
On the motion, Senator Limtiaco.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to echo the sentiments of the last speaker in such that it will open up a lot of boxes, a lot of issues that are over the statute of limitations, but more importantly, I'm wondering whether or not this body is going to start basically extending their arms to different branches of government. As the previous speaker already mentioned, there is a legal process for this company to pursue their claim, and it should be pursued through the judiciary, through a case against the government for non-payment. I don't believe that this body should be attempting to rectify this case with a bill such as this. So I'm opposed to the bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, are there any other speakers? Senator Respicia, would you like to close?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I certainly appreciate the comments from the previous speakers. But what I ask each of us to consider is whether or not this is a rightful debt owed by the government of Guam, and whether or not, as a legislature, we should step up and provide that legislative remedy. We all know that that even with the Attorney General's guidance, that they've missed the window of the statute of limitations to go and file for a Government's Claim Act. If you recall the public hearings that we had on this bill, every single instance that this company testified, even as far back as having to wait 18 years, they were still very humble. They were still very patient. They were still, I guess it's just not in their nature to be aggressive. And so what I said then is what I'm going to say again is this how we reward people for being patient and believing that the government, in our democratic form of government, where we have all the protections of the United States laws, that these businesses, when they do business with the government of Guam and services are rendered satisfactorily, and that promises are made that they're going to be paid year after year after year, do you really blame them for not going through the Government's Claims Act when they were assured year after year after year that this debt will be paid? Even if you look through the file, Madam Speaker, Senator Ben's involvement in this is very present, is very clear that he has written many letters to the Attorney General asking them whether or not this is an obligation of the government of Guam. And so the Attorney General's position, yes it is, but they passed that statute of limitations to go back and make the claim. And so because he didn't say it, one of our colleagues at the public hearing, the good senator from Pt.2, Senator Nicholas, I'm going to compliment him, so I'm going to recognize his name. He said at the public hearing that we have to pursue these kinds of instances and right these kinds of wrongs to make our government credible again. And it's because of these instances where vendors, when they respond to requests for proposals, they factor in a certain percentage, believing and knowing that the government is not going to pay on the 45, 90 days, 120 days, or in this instance, 18 years, Madam Speaker. And so, you know, for someone to stand up and say, well, this is going to open up a can of worms, it's going to open up Pandora's box, I say if there's any vendor out there that's owed, as long as this vendor has been owed, they need to come to the legislature so we can also provide the legislative remedy. I don't think we should turn our back and say, oh, I'm sorry, too late. 'Cause can you imagine, Madam Speaker, if this were to be put to rest finally by us not voting for the bill? Can you imagine what kind of mechanism this government of Guam can take to not pay other vendors? we're worried about the precedent that this is going to create. I'm worried about a mechanism where our government is going to be stringing these vendors along, telling them, we'll pay you, we'll pay you, we'll pay you. I mean, you talk to the vendors out there, we hear it all the time where they almost have to know, like when GRTs are paid, or they kind of have to have an idea of which month's revenue collections or cash collections are better than others, and they time it so that they become more aggressive in getting themselves paid. And this is not the kind of government that we should have, but to say that it's okay, we know that this payment is owed to you, it's okay, but like you didn't take advantage of those remedies that are available to you, that I'm sorry, we're just not going to pay. You know, and so I'm asking us to continue to recognize that this, and by passing this bill, we're giving the governor the authority that they need in order to make this kind of payment. And so now they have a really good position. Oh, we have no authority to pay you, even though it's in the Budget Act, and that Budget Act expired. So now we're renewing this by this bill. Let's just keep making this issue before them, so hopefully that they would recognize that this is a moral obligation, and that this government is going to move in this direction of righting these kinds of wrongs and making good on these services that were rendered. And so I thank everybody for the participation, and I renew my motion to place this bill in the third reading file.
On the motion then to send bill number 18-32 to the third reading file without any objections. Oh, you want to speak? Okay, you may. Senator Munya Barnes, you recognize.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I promise I'll be brief. But when we were working on cases that were more than 10, 15, and 20 years old, it was noted to our committee in the past that sometimes if you can't work the check and balances with the different branches, the best place to come back to is to work with the House of the Legislature, because they're the policy makers. And as we talk about claims and working through government processes, I almost have to feel for what the constituents have been going through, and almost feel compelled to understand what my good colleague from Magana Heights has been advocating for. And I know that this attempt has probably been the fourth or fifth time. When I was working on a bill in the past to work with a project on housing development, it literally took over 23 years. And with that, it went through 4 governors, 11 legislatures, 4 congressional delegates. But the one thing that was different was there was also a lot of money paid into the judicial system to trying to get an order to seek some remedy. And while that was being done in the case that I was working with, this case had come up time and time again. And I could understand what probably the facilitations that went through with working closely with this vendor or with this proposed claimant, that, you know, based on the checks and balances and based on procedures and based on processes, that this is probably the best bet. So I know for a fact that this claimant has come back time and time again and was told that this was something that needed to be worked on, and this is the process that they need to go through. And as I shared with a good colleague from Magana Heights when I was working on the last case, I said, you know, if that could be introduced here and worked on it again, maybe that there could be some facilitation, because you and I know that based on going through the third branch of government, that the time of limitation has lapsed. And I know that our colleague who spoke previously about the concerns also knows that time limitations probably has lapsed in cases like this, but where do we draw the line? We're saying what rightfully the government of Guam owes based on contracts or agreements or under memorandums of understanding that are accepted after projects are initiated. Where do we go from there if we're not going to pay what we agreed to previously with change orders, that these things are going to be paid if these changes are made? So with that being said, I just want to say that I feel for the claimants on this, and I'm wanting to come to a clear resolution that I believe in my heart that this was something that should have been settled many years ago, and that if it needs this body to act on it and step up to the plate, then I'm willing to make that decision come time for the voting process. So thank you, Madam Speaker, for letting me speak on this bill.
Senator Respicio?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On the motion, but I think I found myself a second co-sponsor, so I move to add Senator Barnes as the second co-sponsor. And thank her for her comments.
On that amendment to make Senator Muñoz Barnes second co-sponsor, no objections, so ordered. And on the motion then to send 18-32 to the third reading file without any objections, so ordered. We're going to take a brief recess. Respicio, you recognize.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move that we revert back to motions.
Hearing no objections, so ordered.
Madam Speaker, on item 14 under legislative concurrence, I move from Senator Mike Nicholas's Committee on Aviation, Ground Transportation, Regulatory Concerns, and Future Generations on the nomination of Donald Tino to serve as a member of the Cockpit License Board for a term of 1 year as defined by the Organic Act of Guam and the local laws applicable to the following position as per the Governor's letter, beginning January 25, 2013, with Senator Nicholas's committee's recommendation to do confirm. I move that be placed in the voting file.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
And Madam Speaker, also from Senator Nicholas' same committee, on the nomination of Pedro Perez Ada III, this is Sunny Ada, to serve as a member of the Guam International Airport Board of Directors for a term of 3 years as defined by the Organic Act of Guam and the local laws applicable to the following positions per the governor's letter, and beginning on February 11th, 2013, and with Senator Mike Nicholas's committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that be placed in the voting file.
Hearing no objections, so ordered.
And Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move that we go to the voting file and that we vote without engrossment on resolution number 98-32, bill number 81-32, and bill number 77-32, all without engrossment, as well as the legislative concurrences, or the appointments to these various commissions, boards or commissions.
On that motion without any objections, so ordered. Resolution number 98-32.
Resolution number 98-32 COR as introduced by Judith T. Wanpat EDD and TR Munya Barnes. Relative to Minute 32 Nalias de Surenguahan, the 32nd Guam Legislature, supporting the Coalition of Flight Attendant Unions, Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, Coalition of Airline Pilots Associations, and the Federal Flight Deck Officers Association, in their opposition of the Transportation Security Administration TSA policy change to allow knives and other dangerous items on board aircrafts, and to encourage the Secretary of Homeland Security, TSA, to prohibit airplane passengers from bringing aboard a passenger aircraft any item that was prohibited as of March 1st, 2013.
Roll call.
Senator Tom Ada. Aye. Senator Tom Ada, aye. Senator Tony Ada. Aye. Senator Tony Ada, aye. Senator Uggan. Vice Speaker Cruz. Aye. Vice Speaker Cruz, aye. Senator Duenas. Senator Duenas, excused, absent. Senator Limtiaco. Aye. Senator Limtiaco, aye. Senator McCready. Aye. Senator McCready, aye. Senator Morrison. Senator Morrison, excused, absent. Senator Munya Barnes. Okay. Senator Munya Barnes, aye. Senator Pangilinan. Yes. Senator Pangilinan, aye. Senator Respicio. Aye. Senator Respicio, aye. Senator Rodriguez. Yes. Senator Rodriguez, aye. Senator San Nicolas. Yes. Senator San Nicolas, aye. Speaker Wampat.
I'm good.
Speaker Wampat, aye. Senator Yamashita. Yes. Senator Yamashita, aye.
Not here. Senator Uggan.
Madam Speaker, I move that we excuse Senator Uggan from voting.
That motion without any objections, so ordered.
Senator Uggan, excused.
Resolution number 98-32 CR received 12 yea votes and 3 excused absence. Resolution number 98-32 is duly passed by this body. Bill number 88-32. 81-32. One, Speaker Van
Can I just
Galen?
have a 1-minute recess?
Okay, we're going to take a brief recess.
I think we should have a call of the House.
The legislature is back in session. Senator Respicio.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to reconsider the actions of the body on Resolution 98.
On that motion, without any objections, so ordered.
So now I move that we vote on the resolution along with all the other items on the voting, items that we agreed to vote on the voting file, the two bills and the appointments.
So on resolution 9,
Yeah, Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, would it be possible just to allow Senator Uggan to cast his vote?
Yes,
And
rather
so
than
all the
every-
other votes will stand as recorded?
so on that motion, then to allow Senator Frank Agon to vote at least on resolution 98. Without any objections, so ordered. So Senator, can you please register your vote?
Madam Speaker, thank you for the indulgence of our colleagues and yourself. I vote aye. On the resolution without reading the title. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Uggan, aye.
So the votes on resolution 98-32 reads 13 yea votes and 2 excused absence. Resolution 98-32 is duly passed by this body. Bill number 81-32.
Bill number 81-32 COR, as substituted by the Committee on General Government Operations and Cultural Affairs. Introduced by V.C. Pangilinan, B.J.F. Cruz. An act to provide health insurance to Government of Guam employees and retirees for fiscal year 2014.
Roll call.
Senator Tom Ada. Aye. Senator Tom Ada, aye. Senator Tony Ada. No. Senator Tony Ada, nay. Senator Uggan. Senator Uggan, aye. Vice Speaker Cruz. Aye. Vice Speaker Cruz, aye. Senator Duenas. Senator Duenas excused. Senator Lim Tiaco. No. Senator Lim Tiaco, nay. Senator McCready.
Aye. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, yes, Senator McCready.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, I would like to fully disclose that my company does have a financial stake in this wellness part of the contract of Bill 81. I don't think it's a problem for me voting. I just wanted to disclose that to the body and to see if the body wanted to take a vote whether or not to recuse myself or not. So I just wanted to, you know, be as transparent as possible that I do have a contract with Select Care.
What is the pleasure of the body then? So to allow Senator McCready to recuse Senator McCready from voting. Any objections? Show, no, there's no objections.
I'm not recusing myself. I'm just disclosing that.
Oh, you're just
that it
disclosing
could
then,
be
but you will
perceived as
vote
a
then.
conflict of interest.
Okay.
If the body doesn't object to me voting, then I'll vote. But if they have a objection to me voting, as it be a conflict of interest, then I wouldn't have any objection.
Yeah, so there's actually, I know, no request for anything, and nobody objected when I asked originally even to recuse yourself. So, if any,
Affirming that he has a conflict of interest? If he is, then I'm affirming that he shouldn't be voting.
that he shouldn't.
If he is affirming that he has a conflict of interest because he has a financial contract
And I think-
with
and I
Select
think-
Care, then I would think so.
And I believe that's what he's saying because he has a contract.
No, but he's saying he doesn't believe so, and so he wants to vote. I guess.
So Senator, you want to clarify then whether you
Okay,
do
so
or
let
you
me
do not
clarify it.
have a conflict of
Contenders
interest?
Gym has a contract with Select Care for the wellness portion of this contract. I do not own Contenders Gym on paper anymore. My wife does. So my family still has a stake in the contract.
So there is a conflict.
So if there is a conflict,
So then the question here would be then to recuse your motion. Are you making a motion to recuse yourself?
I'm just, I'm just being very transparent. I'm disclosing my financial interests with specifics to this contract in the wellness portion. I do not think that it is a conflict of interest in me voting, but I am leaving it up to the body if they would like, or if they believe that it's a conflict of interest, then I would leave it up to the body to vote. If that's feasible.
There's no motion then in essence, so therefore, yes, you will vote. You'll be asked to vote.
Senator McCready. No. Senator McCready, nay. Senator Morrison. Senator Morrison, excused. Senator Munya Barnes. Yes. Senator Munya Barnes, aye. Senator Pangilinan. Yes. Senator Pangilinan, aye. Senator Respicio. Okay. Senator Respicio, aye. Senator Rodriguez. Senator Rodriguez, nay. Senator San Nicolas. Yes. Senator San Nicolas, aye. Speaker Wampat.
We're voting, right?
Yes.
Aye.
Speaker Wampat, aye. Senator Yamashita. Yes. Senator Yamashita, aye.
Bill number 81-32 received 9 yea votes, 4 nay votes, and 2 excused absence. Bill number 81-32 is duly passed by this body. Bill number 77-32.
Bill number 77-32 COR, as substituted by the Committee on Appropriations, Public Debt, Legal Affairs, Retirement, Public Parks, Recreation, Historic Preservation, and Land. Introduced by V.C. Pangilinan, R.J. Respicio. An act to amend Section 68975 of Chapter 68, Article 11, Title 21 of the Guam Code Annotated relative to the development of the Farmers Market Facility by the Farmers Cooperative Association of Guam, Inc.
Roll call.
Senator Tom Ada. Aye. Senator Tom Ada, aye. Senator Tony Ada. Aye. Senator Tony Ada, aye. Senator Uggan. Senator Uggan, aye. Vice Speaker Cruz. Aye. Vice Speaker Cruz, aye. Senator Duenas. Senator Duenas, excused. Senator Limtiaco. Aye. Senator Limtiaco, aye. Senator McCready. Aye. Senator McCready, aye. Senator Morrison. Senator Morrison, excused. Senator Munya Barnes. Senator Munya Barnes, aye. Senator Pangilinan. Senator Pangilinan, aye. Senator Respicio. Senator Respicio, aye. Senator Rodriguez. Senator Rodriguez, aye. Senator San Nicolas. Senator San Nicolas, aye. Speaker Wampat.
Ungan.
Speaker Wampat, aye. Senator Yamashita. Senator Yamashita, aye.
Bill number 77-32 received 13 yea votes, 2 excused absence. Bill number 77-32 is duly passed by this body. So we've exhausted the list for today, at least. I say we're going to vote. Oh, the confirmation, that's right. Where are my list? Okay, so Ava is ready to leave. Oh, yes, I did. That was music, $5. And because you tried to cheat me, then it's $10. Okay, on the nomination of Concepcion Dueñas to serve as a member of the Guam Parole Board, all in favor, please raise your hand. Ms. Dueñas has received 13 yea votes and 2 absent, so therefore she's duly confirmed by this body. On the nomination of Mr. Goring T. Dueñas to serve as a member of the Guam Parole Board, all in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, Mr. Goring Dueñas received 13 yea votes. He's duly confirmed by this body. On the appointment of John A. Smith to serve as a member of Civil Service Commission, all in favor, please raise your hand. Mr. Smith received 13 yea votes. He's duly confirmed by this body. On the appointment of Elise McDonough Iriarte to serve as a member of the Guam Solid Waste Authority Board of Directors, all in favor, please raise your hand. Are you voting? Okay. Elise Iriarte received 13 yea votes. She's duly confirmed by this body. On the nomination of Mayor Robert Hoffman to serve as a member of the Guam Visitors Bureau Board of Directors, all in favor, please raise your hand. Mayor Hoffman received 13 yea votes. He's duly confirmed by this body. On the appointment of Mr. Donald Titano to serve as a member of the Cockpit License Board, all in favor, please raise your hand. Mr. Titano is duly confirmed by this body. On the appointment of Mr. Pedro Perez Ada III to serve as a member of the Guam International Airport Board of Directors, all in favor, please raise your hand. Mr. Pedro Ada III is duly confirmed by this body. Okay, so Senator Espicio.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move that we revert back to the second reading file and to recess until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.
On that motion, without any objection, so ordered, we will recess until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.